Well, yesterday we were able to celebrate Silas turning 5 years old. You know, it's hard to believe. It was just over 5 years ago when we came here. He wasn't with us. Well, I guess he was somewhat with us. But it was on February 3rd, 2019 that he made his appearance into this world on Super Bowl Sunday, one of the last few that Tom Brady won with the Patriots. But you know, celebrating his birthday yesterday, it got me thinking about a story. And I want you to picture this. A young child filled with excitement decides to bake a cake all by themselves for the first time. They've seen it done before, but this is now their chance to try. The kitchen becomes a playground of flour and of eggs and of sugar, but in their eagerness, they make a mix-up. They confuse the salt for sugar. You know, in our moments of surprise, we find our truest lessons. This simple mistake turns the anticipation of sweetness into a surprising lesson. I mean, have you ever set out to do something with a clear picture in mind only to find the result unexpectedly different? How did you feel? Lost? Frustrated? Today we're talking about living like Christ. It's a journey that may seem straightforward, but it's often filled with unexpected turns and lessons, much like our first attempt at baking a cake. It's about learning from our mix-ups and finding sweetness in the lessons they teach us. I mean, how do we keep going when things don't go as planned? You know, on our journey through life, we often face roads that seem too difficult for us to travel. Have you ever felt pulled in so many different directions that you're not sure where you're to turn next? In our rush to achieve, to be seen, to meet the expectations of others, and sometimes we lose sight of what truly matters. I mean, how often do we chase after things that we believe will make us happy, success, approval, possessions, only to find ourselves feeling empty? It's like running after the wind, isn't it? Right? You can see it moving, you can feel it against your skin, but you can't hold it in your hands. See, Jesus calls us to a different path, one that might not make sense to the world around us. See, He asks us to find richness in simplicity, joy in service, and success in love. But how can we do this when everything around us seems to say the opposite? Well, on our journey today, we're exploring a message from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 through chapter 3, verse 7, where Peter offers us guidance in how to live a life in a way that reflects Jesus' light. He begins by calling us sojourners and exiles, which means that we're travelers in this world, not settling down, but passing through with a purpose. Peter encourages us to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. And in simpler terms, he's advising us to stay away from the desires that can lead us away from living the good life. It's like knowing that eating too much candy isn't good for your health. Well, similarly, indulging in bad habits isn't good for our spiritual journey. He also talks about doing good, even when others around us may not understand why. Right? Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God. This means living in a way that shows the best of what we believe, so that others can see the goodness in our actions and feel inspired. And Peter uses Jesus as our ultimate guide, showing us how to face challenges with grace and kindness. For when we interact with others, whether they're our family, our friends, or our leaders, we are asked to show respect, love, and humility, mirroring the way that Jesus lived. And so as we delve this morning into these verses, I want us to ask ourselves, how can we be like travelers who leave a positive mark? How can we use the teachings here to better our lives and to better those lives around us following Jesus' example? On the back page of your bulletin, you can find an outline to help you along as we look at to live like Christ, how we transform with Jesus' grace, humility, and service. Our first point this morning is a heart renewed by Christ. Have you ever felt like you're in this tug of war between wanting to do the right thing, but yet we're tempted to do the opposite? That's the battle that happens inside of us all. It's not just about deciding to do good, but it's about changing our hearts to match Christ's heart. Let's dive here into this idea, guided by the words of 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, where we're given clear advice how to win this inner battle. We read, "Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation." Here, Peter is talking to us like a coach who's giving a pep talk. He's saying, look, you're in this world, but don't let this world's bad habits drag you down. These sinful desires he mentions, there are many things, like our bad thoughts or our actions that try to pull us away from being our best selves. And Peter calls us as foreigners and exiles. He means that we should remember that we are meant to live differently, not getting lost in what everyone else is doing. I want you to imagine Anna, a young woman who is heading off to college at the big state university, very different from the small hometown that she grew up in. There she's surrounded by parties and the pressure to fit in, but instead of giving in, she finds a group of friends who share her values at the college Christian fellowship. There they help each other stay true to who they are, to how they were brought up in the faith, even when it's tough. You see, Anna's story shows us that it's possible to make good choices even when it's easier for us to go along with the crowd. So what does this mean for us? I mean, how often do we face choices where, let's just face it, we can take the easy route or we can take the right route? Starting with something as simple as a daily prayer or reading from the Bible can help us to tune in to what's truly important. But it's also helpful to have those close friends who are there to remind us of who we want to be. People who will cheer us on to make good choices and will correct us when we're going down the wrong path. Think about Jesus. He was the king of making right choices, not because it was easy, but because he knew it was worth it. His life shows us that being pure and humble is not weak. It's actually the strongest thing that we can do. When we try to be like Jesus, we're not just trying to be good people. We're changing our hearts to be more like His. You see, living like Christ isn't just a lofty goal. It's about making those small daily decisions that reflect His love and kindness. It could be as simple as offering a helping hand without being asked, or here's one, choosing to speak words of encouragement instead of criticism. You know, every act of kindness, no matter how small, is a step towards lighting up the dark. But what does it look like in our everyday lives? Imagine you're at the grocery store and you see somebody that's struggling to reach an item on the high shelf. Well, do you walk by? Or do you say, hey, why don't you go find a worker over there? Or do you stop and help? Or when you hear somebody that's spreading a rumor, do you add fuel to the fire? Or do you change the subject to something positive? See, these moments are opportunities for us to practice humility and purity, to choose the higher path that Jesus walked. So let's take a moment to reflect. When was the last time that you faced a choice between the easy path and the right path? How did you respond? Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about striving to bring a little more light into the world, just as Christ did. So let's hold close to this thought right here. To live like Christ is to light up the dark. To live like Christ is to light up the dark. It's a journey of many steps, some big, some small. But each of them brings us closer to the heart of who we are called to be. So as we support each other in this journey, let's celebrate every step taken in love, every choice made in humility, and every moment that we choose to shine in the darkness. As we embrace this call to light up the dark with our hearts aligned with Christ's humility and purity, our journey doesn't end there. No, it stretches into every corner of our lives, touching not just our hearts, but our homes as well. You see, the way that we love and interact with those that are closest to us is a powerful reflection of this transformation. This leads us to our next point. Home. Love like Christ. Have you ever noticed how tricky it can be to get along with the people that are closest to us? Oh yeah, whether it's a spouse or your family members or close friends. Relationships, right, they're filled with ups and downs. And into this mix here, the Apostle Peter offers us some advice that might seem old, but is incredibly relevant to us today. He talks about mutual respect and submission in marriage, and really any close relationship, as a way for us to mirror our relationship with Christ. Let's unpack this idea, making it clear as day as we see how it can change our lives. Read with me 1 Peter chapter 3, starting in 1. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as a weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Peter addresses both wives and husbands, urging them to treat each other with respect and with understanding. Now, he's not setting up a scoreboard to see who's better than whom here. He's encouraging a covenant relationship that reflects both love and respect that we should have for everyone. See, this idea of submitting to one another isn't about losing our voice or our strength. It's about supporting each other in love. Just like team members on a relay race will pass the baton smoothly to win the race together. You see, when Peter talks to wives about submissions and about husbands, about honoring their wives, he's flipping the script about what power and leadership look like. It's not about who's in charge, because let's face it, God is in charge, right? It's about how we can lift each other up. Think about it like a dance, right? Both partners are moving together, each step in sync to create something beautiful. Let's talk about a couple from the early days of the church, Priscilla and Aquila. You might think of them as the ultimate team. We first meet them in the book of Acts, where they're making tents, just like Paul. But here's the interesting part. They didn't just share a job with Paul. They shared a mission. Paul says something pretty amazing about them in Romans chapter 16. He says, they risked their necks for my life, to whom not only I give thanks, but all the churches of the Gentiles give thanks as well. So what can Priscilla and Aquila teach us about relationships some 2,000 years later? Well, they show us that being in a covenant relationship means more than just living together. It's about working together towards a common goal. They didn't just keep their faith to themselves. They opened their homes to others, helping the church to grow. And when they met Apollos, a guy who was really passionate about Jesus, but he didn't have all of the facts straight, they didn't just dismiss him. Instead, they invited him in, and they gently guided him, sharing their knowledge and helping him to understand more about God's way. And what's really special here is how they worked together as a team. There wasn't one person dominating as one in charge. They were equals, each bringing their strengths to the table. This kind of mutual respect and complementary relationship is exactly what Peter is talking about. He's not talking about one person doing all of the giving and the other one doing all of the taking. It's about supporting each other, learning from each other, and growing together. So how can we, like Priscilla and Aquila, work together with those that are close to us in order to support each other's growth, to contribute to our communities? How does this speak to us in our own relationships? Whether we're talking about marriage or the way that we interact with those that we're close to. See, the key is mutual respect and understanding. It's about finding ways that we support each other, whether that's through prayer or honest chats or simply being there when the other person needs it. It's like being teammates in the game of life, where the goal is to help each other to grow and to succeed. Have you ever considered how these small acts of kindness can reflect Christ's love in your home? Imagine deciding to listen first before speaking in an argument, or choosing to do a chore that you know your partner dislikes. These actions, small as they may seem, are powerful expressions of love and respect. Now, Jesus is our ultimate example here. He showed us the greatest respect and love to those around him, even knowing that we were sinners and far from perfect. He washed his disciples' feet, a task reserved for servants, to demonstrate true leadership and love. And so in our relationships, acting like Jesus means that we are putting the other person first, showing respect and serving without keeping score. And bringing it all together, remember this: love at home transforms the heart and lights the world. Love at home transforms the heart and lights the world. This isn't just a nice thought. It's a call to action. You see, living out this kind of love and respect can be challenging. Oh, yes, it can. But it is incredibly rewarding. It makes our homes places of peace and strength that shine brightly in a world that so often feels dark. And when we strive to live like Christ and to love like Him, let's support each other in this journey. Let's be quick to listen, slow to anger, and always ready to lift each other up. And with God's help, oh yes, we can make our homes and our relationships reflection of His love, places where everyone feels valued and understood. So let's start today with just one act of kindness at a time. So as we've explored this transformative power of Christ-like love in our homes, guided by the inspiring example of Priscilla and Aquila, we're now ready to take our next step in this journey. Now this step here, it moves us from the heart of our homes to the pattern of our daily lives. It's about the habits that we cultivate, those small, repeated actions that shape who we are and how we live. And this brings us to our final point, habit in His steps. You know, in today's world where standing out and moving up often means that we push others aside, this idea of submission in service might seem out of step. Yet these are the very habits that Jesus modeled for us. It's a way of life that turns the world's values upside down. Here in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 25, we're called to embrace these habits, not as signs of weakness, but as powerful expressions of our faith. I mean, how can we, in a culture that prizes individual achievement, find strength in submission and fulfillment in serving others? Well, let's read. Be subject, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people. Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the emperor. Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only the good and gentle, but also to the unjust. For this is a gracious thing when, mindful of God, one endures sorrows while suffering unjustly. For what credit is it if, when you sin and are beaten for it, you endure? But if when you do good and suffer for it, you endure. This is a gracious thing in the sight of God. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you might follow in His footsteps. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in His mouth. When He was reviled, He did not revile in return. When He suffered, He did not threaten, but continued entrusting Himself to Him who judges justly. He Himself bore our sins in His body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By His wounds you have been healed. For you were straying like sheep, but now have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Peter's message is clear. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority. Now, this isn't about giving up our rights or accepting injustice. Instead, it's about choosing a path of humility and trust in God, even when it's hard. You see, Peter points to Jesus, who faced unjust suffering without retaliation or bitterness. Instead, He entrusted Himself to God, showing us the ultimate example and strength in submission. You see, Jesus' journey wasn't easy. He was misunderstood, mistreated, and ultimately crucified. Yet His response was never defiance, but trust in His Father's plan. This path of submission wasn't passive, It was an active choice to fulfill God's will, demonstrating a strength that comes from a complete reliance on God. Consider the story of Pat Tillman, professional football player who, after the events on September the 11th, left his NFL career to join the military. Tillman's decision wasn't about seeking glory or escaping his current life. No, it was a profound act of service, driven by a sense of duty to something that is greater than himself. Like Jesus, Tillman chose a path that led away from personal gain towards sacrifice and service, embodying the principle of putting others and his convictions before his own desires. And in doing so led to his own death in defense of our freedom. What does this mean for us? How do we view authority and the opportunities to serve in our lives? Are we quick to assert our rights? Or do we look for ways to serve others and to honor God, even when it costs us something? See, living out these principles might mean giving up of our time to help others, or showing respect and kindness in our workplace, or praying for our leaders, and not just that they would get defeated or in the next election or get impeached. See, these actions that reflect Christ's humility and selflessness. Jesus didn't just tell us to serve. No, He showed us how. His death on the cross was the ultimate act of service, a sacrifice made out of love for us. And so by choosing to submit to earthly authorities and to do the will of the Father, Jesus provides us with a blueprint for living. And His example challenges us to look beyond our immediate desires and comforts to see the greater purpose and impact of our lives when we are aligned with His. So adopting these habits of submission and service is not about diminishing our value, but it's about discovering the true strength and freedom to follow in Jesus' steps. To serve is to reign. It's a reminder that in God's kingdom, true greatness is measured by our willingness to give of ourselves to others. So as we cultivate these habits in our daily lives, we're not just obeying a set of rules. Rather, we are participating in a divine dance, moving to the rhythm of God's grace and love. So let us step forward in faith, embracing submission and service not as burdens, but as opportunities to embody the love and the strength of Christ to this world that is around us. So as we come to a close through this journey to live like Christ, we embrace this transformative power of grace, humility, and service. So we have explored how these principles deeply impact our hearts and our homes and our daily habits. We've seen how by following in Jesus' steps, we can bring about real change in our lives and in the world around us. At this time, I'd ask if our musicians would come forward. Perhaps, though, today, you find yourself standing at a crossroads, recognizing a desire for transformation, yet you're unsure just how to begin. Maybe you've been moved by this call to renew your heart, to nurture Christ-like love in your relationships, or to adopt habits of service and submission. Yet, let's just face it, you feel like you're lacking the strength to do so. Oh, this is where the beautiful truth of the gospel comes into play. Oh, you see, this is a truth. That promise is not just guidance, but the power to change through the grace of Jesus Christ. So today, I extend to you an invitation. An invitation to step into a life that is transformed by Jesus. Whether you've never made that decision to follow him, or maybe you're seeking a deeper commitment, now is the moment to respond to his call. You see, it's an invitation to experience his grace, to learn humility right at his feet, and to serve as he served. So if you're feeling prompted to make a decision, whether it's to accept Christ's offer of salvation for the first time, or to recommit your life to him, or to join our church family here at Central Baptist Church, I'm going to be standing down front, ready to welcome you with open arms. In a moment, I'm going to pray, and we're going to sing, I Surrender All. Beautiful hymn that echoes our decision to give our lives fully to Jesus, trusting in him to transform us from the inside out. Would you pray with me? Oh, Lord Almighty, as we stand here this moment at the threshold of decision, God, I ask that you would just stir deeply within our hearts. Oh, please let the Spirit move among us, calling out those to seek salvation. Oh, those that are longing for peace and redemption. May you open our hearts to the transformative power of your love. Guide those who are standing right now at the crossroads towards this path of eternal life. Oh, may this be a moment of a turning point to leading each one to embrace your grace, to step forward in faith, declaring, oh, yes, to a life with you. It's in your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.